Hello and welcome to another Locations, Lifestyle and Business segment. I'm Alicia Williams, Director and Property Specialist at Locations Estate Agents in Gladstone. And joining me today is the lovely Georgie O'Mara from Core Property Group down in Sydney. Hello and welcome, Georgie.
Hey Alicia, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on the panel. You originally started your real estate career in Gladstone, is that right?
I did. Good old Happy Rock. I miss it. I miss it so much. And I did. I cut my teeth up there and it was great. So it's a good market to learn in.
Yeah, it's definitely had its challenges over the years, that's for sure. And I guess going down into Sydney, that was a different sort of market for you too. There was lots of challenges and things that you had to overcome there, but doing exceptionally well now. So kudos to you. Well done. Round of applause. We do it, our team.
Thanks, love. Not as good as you. Not as good as you.
There's no rulers here. There's no measuring. Everyone's different. So for the people who don't know much about Core Property Group or yourself, or either of those things, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what Core Property Group does?
Yeah, sure. So I am a director at Core. We started 5 years ago with a little office here in the south of Sydney in Heathcote in the Sutherland Shire. We actually originally started out doing development sales. So coming from Gladstone, my background was sort of land subdivisions, units off the plan, that sort of thing, which I thought was normal. And then I got to Sydney and realised quite quickly that the Sydney agents really didn't have experience in that field, which was quite good for me. But yeah, so we started 5 years ago with a focus on development. The market obviously fluctuates, so we sort of were forced into, I guess, widening our horizons a little bit to do residential real estate too. So now we do residential sales, property management and development. And yeah, we've got a nice little team of 10. We now have 2 offices, which is exciting. So we opened our second office in December last year, before COVID, which was great timing. Yeah, that's sort of who we are.
Yeah, great. And just knowing that you've had your second office, just the decision making that comes with that process, the extra risk and costs involved in doing something like that, everything is doubled. Not necessarily sales are always doubled, but definitely the fixed operating costs are doubled, which is interesting. Yeah. So what has been one big challenge for you recently that you've been able to overcome, and what you feel comfortable sharing with people?
Yeah, look, I mean, so pre-COVID, a big challenge for me was trying to balance being a sales agent and managing the business. So my role is to sort of oversee property management, oversee the sales team. I'm sure you do the same. And then also trying to be a sales agent. So pre-COVID, that was my biggest challenge, is just trying to make sure I'm servicing my clients to the highest level possible, obviously, as well as to manage the business. So that was the hardest before COVID. Since COVID, the hardest thing this year has actually been, obviously our team was split, so we have 2 offices since December. We knew that it was going to be hard to keep the team bonded, and that, we like to keep the vibes up, where we have a really good culture, we're super fun, but with social distancing and not being able to see each other much at all, that's been super hard, just trying to keep team morale up and keep everyone close. That's been hard. So now that things are loosening up a bit, we're looking at doing a few more, we're looking at doing the Holy Moly golf soon. Don't tell the team. And like just a few little silly things like that, just to try and bring some fun back, because it's been a really crappy year. So stress, everyone's feeling, everyone's put on a bit of weight, and it's just, yeah, everyone's not feeling the best.
Yeah, I think the weight thing around COVID was really interesting. And when we were doing our open homes, we had a situation where we probably worked the hardest ever at an open home during COVID, because we were doing the virtual walk around. So you're looking, at camera or Facebook, whichever you had going on, responding to comments, talking on the fly, having to process those comments and walking around at the same time, you get to about the 5-minute mark and just be panting on the end of the
know. I know.
So it was good to, work on some match fitness around how to speak and read and do an open all simultaneously.
Yeah. And even when we're allowed to then do one-on-one private inspections, like if we normally have 40 people at the first open, we would then be doing 40 private inspections. So the sales team were just like, and the rental side of things, you would know, with Scott Morrison announcing no one can be evicted, that sort of turned our industry on its head. And so our rental department's just been really under the pump. And yeah, it's been a tough year after that. And then obviously before that, we had the bushfires. So down here on the South Coast. So yeah, it's been an interesting year. So I think for the second half, we're definitely just trying to focus on trying to have fun. Like, it's been such a heavy year, and I just want to take some weight off for the team and try and enjoy ourselves a bit.
I think with salespeople as well, typically their profile is a people person. So for a lot of them, that one-on-one contact of like, oh my God. And I did see it in our team, depending on what their profile was. There was the high eyes, that like that people contact. And for the first 2 weeks, it's just like, the world is ending. What am I going to do? My life is ruined.
Yeah.
But then
everyone's
okay.
Like, is my job safe? Like, are we
Yes.
gonna? Yeah, it was
crazy.
Yeah, and watching the news every day, I said to our team, you can't watch the news all the time at the moment, because it just will kill you. It's too full on. You just need to shut it off a little bit,
Yeah, I literally said the same thing in our business from a leadership point of view, is we are aware of it, but we're not to buy into the hysteria. And anyone in our team who buys into the hysteria doesn't have a place here. I will support people who are going to have focus and clarity and look at the bigger picture, but I'm not going to support people who bring that negative thing in here. It's not about not being a realist. It's about being very mindful of your energy and the information you are receiving, and how that brings down the whole team and influences everything. So look, a couple of challenges there and a couple of big goals. What's your big one for the next 12 months? Post-COVID, the world's a happy place, all things remaining equal. What does Georgie's big bucket list 2021 goal look like?
Well, I'm going to be buying a house, which is exciting. Ooh. So that's my personal one. So I'll be doing that later this year. But from a business one, we really want to be number one for our postcode. So it sort of fluctuates. We have been number one before. I think we're number one at the moment, looking at the last 3 months. But we really want to sort of be head and shoulders above everyone else. So we'll be focusing on Engadine, which is where we've got our second office.
Yeah.
So it's our goal to sort of have at least 45% market share by the end of the year. We also want to take out the Rate My Agent, which you would know what that is. I'm not sure if your viewers would, but it's sort of a real estate, how would we explain it? Like a real estate awards thingy.
Ranking system?
Yeah, that's it. So it's a ranking system. So we want to take out the award for Engadine at the end of the year. So we're working hard on that. And that's about it. I mean, the goal has really been about surviving for the start of the year. So I think just a few little goals for us to finish off the year will be good.
It's probably the one thing I've noticed just talking to you today, between our Sydney and Gladstone markets, or regional markets, is that in Sydney you probably felt those lockdown rules a lot more than we did here.
Yeah.
In Gladstone, we didn't have a COVID case. There was someone in Calliope who had it but had self-isolated. So no real immediate threat. So it was a little bit, I describe it as like the Hunger Games, where you're in this bizarre situation where you've got to follow these rules, but they're not really impacting you, but you've got to abide by them, and there's consequences, but it's surreal. It's very like a disconnect with what was happening. I mean, it would be great to have 40 people come through our open homes. I mean, that's fabulous. And I guess one of the questions I had when I heard you say that was, if that were the case, was then a perfect environment for online auctions, because we've seen that develop. So could you do the virtual tour and then just do it straight as an auction, or did those, say, 40 people still want to physically inspect the property?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. The virtual inspections and the online auctions was something that we were super interested to see how they'd go and how the buyers would respond. I think it comes down to the bottom line. If you and I think about if we were going to be buying a house, there's no way I would buy a house without inspecting it in real life. Like, let's be real. But in saying that, the virtual inspections helped people to sort of get a gauge for if the house ticked most of the boxes, and if it did, then they come through for a private inspection. With the online auctions, they definitely did work. We sold a couple of properties using them. However, it is much more emotional to have everyone, in real life in front of each other at either an on-site auction or an in-room auction. So now that COVID's over, we're definitely going back to our on-sites at the moment. We run our own in-room auctions. So we'll be going back to those hopefully later in the year. We don't want to sort of do it too soon. But yeah, I mean, if with the situation we had, super thankful we could do those online auctions and the virtuals. But now that we can do real life, I think that's what we prefer.
Yeah, interesting, because I find that people up here, auctions never really been a big thing, as you know, coming from Gladstone. It's just not something that's embraced, and certainly we don't have that pent-up demand as much as you guys do to really drive it. And you touch on the emotive component of auction, which is incredibly important as well to make that recipe really work. I think we will still do, video walkthroughs, but you're 100% right. People still like to touch, feel, be there, see it with their own eyes. That's never going to change with property. It's just that relationship people have. That tangible relationship. But interesting that we have now these tools that work in that way. So,
I know, and a lot of the tools that we were using through COVID had been available to us for months and years beforehand, but we'd just never been forced to use them. So I think it's definitely good. Things like online exchanges of contracts. So that's something that obviously we had to do after the online auctions, and that's probably something that as a business we will look at maybe continuing and use it after our in-room auctions, just because it is a bit quicker, it's a little bit more, I guess, environmentally friendly. We don't have to print 2 huge thick contracts. So yeah, things like that I think are positives we'll take away from the crisis.
Yeah, and I think that because we've had that, the public and buyers and sellers accept it too. So before it was kind of like this wishy-washy tech thing, we don't really, that's kind of,
kind of a bit weird.
Yeah. That's so strange, people do that. Now it's like, oh yeah, that's socially acceptable. Whereas it was socially awkward, now it's socially acceptable. So it's good to reframe it. A quick acid test. What's happening in the Sydney market? What do people need to know? What's important? What's ticking?
It's really interesting when people talk about the Sydney market. I think it's important for people to remember that the Sydney market is just so big. So obviously where we are in the Sutherland Shire, I can talk about that market, but so we're seeing really low levels of stock. So obviously the media has been portraying that the market's been really bad, so people haven't been as open to selling. The prices we're getting have still been really solid. So we're still being heaps of inquiry, heaps of numbers through the door, getting good prices. I have heard a few stories of valuations creating issues for some finance applications, not too many. Our average days on market is 24. So it's still working. Yeah, so the media really sort of, through COVID, they talked it down a lot. Which was hard for us because everyone wants to live in Sydney. Like, it's not, with immigration obviously being stopped, I think maybe some of the western suburbs are seeing it a bit more than what we're seeing in the east and the south. But the market's still super strong. So it's a great time to sell. There's, like, for example, we've been seeing in the Sutherland Shire, there's been 19 auctions last weekend. The weekend before there was 10, the weekend before there was 5. Whereas normally we would have 30, 40, 50 in a weekend. So if you can, it's all about supply and demand. The buyers still want to buy and there's less stock. So prices are definitely, they're holding because of that. So I think once JobKeeper's finished, which everyone's talking about, I think we'll be able to see if we have been living in a false economy and see how the market sort of goes.
That's fantastic to know, because again, we see the media portray, blood on the ground, Sydney, Melbourne, sometimes Brisbane, but really at a grassroots level, you're seeing a very, very different trend. And as you say, just for your area, like your sort of postcode and stamp, that's interesting. And the western suburbs are probably different than, to other areas as well. But very, very interesting to hear that. And when you talk about a false economy, even a false reading, we are monitoring a similar trend around rental vacancy here, because it's sitting around that 1 to 1.5%. And we're thinking,
that's good.
Yeah, it's Mickey Mouse. You couldn't really wish for a better one. And if you got to zero, it would just never happen. You'd never get that full bounce out. But we want to know if it is a false reading, and if indeed people have been stuck, for a better word, here in Gladstone. But what we're seeing is, even though the Queensland travel restrictions have been lifted, there's no transient sort of population in and out, because generally we would have people within Queensland, rare to have it interstate. So it looks like we have had a positive net overall increase of people in Gladstone. And again, just going to keep monitoring that. And there's some other projects and things coming up later in the year, like construction and industry and what have you, and shutdown work. So yeah, I think it is sounding good. But again, we're very different to, say, Rockhampton, which is an hour north. And people just, when they hear about these mining towns, can have that disconnect. And you'd get that down to Sydney people. You have, when you worked here, you'd have Sydney investors call and say, about this mining town, Gladstone. You're like, it's not a mining town.
I know.
It's a port city, for crying out loud. But people just don't know, because the media portrays one thing. And I think that's where real estate agents are probably undervalued, is the fact that they do know a lot about their local area and their economy. And if you speak to good agents, not ones who like to hype up and spin you a lot of BS, they will tell you exactly what's going on in the market. They'll know their key drivers, which is really important. So any words of business advice you'd like to share?
Oh gosh, I'm not a business guru.
But you're a lady in business.
For me, a good friend of mine once said to me a while ago, you need to think strategically, not emotionally. And I think business is so much harder than I thought it would be. I always say to people, if you had have told me how hard it would be 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done it. Managing staff and just 7 days a week and dreaming about work, and it's a lot. So I think and as a female, it's easy to get, we all have our emotional weeks. So I think for me, I'm an overthinker. So whenever I catch myself doing that sort of thing, I sort of just try and think more strategically, take the emotion out of it, and then I've got a much clearer idea of where I should be going. So there's a little nugget for you.
No, I think it's good advice, and everyone thinks and deals with challenges in their business in a different way. And I feel that, as you evolve and in different stages of working life, there's going to be different problems that you come up against, and it's a different context. It's all relevant depending on where you are at in that cycle and that phase. So well, look, you're doing amazingly well. I can't thank you enough for your time today. If you have any questions, or people have questions, sorry, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, they can email me. So it's just georgie@coreproperty.com.au. They can jump on and like our Facebook page. Little plug there. But thank you so much for having me. And if anyone has any questions, I would love to answer them. Sydney market, development, whatever.
And we did talk about this just before. Are we going to do a little dance off at the end? I don't have beats.
If you can get your cat who's behind you in that box, if you can get him, and if you get him and do a dance, I'll do a dance with you.
Oh, I'll see if he's available.
Okay.
No, he's actually jumped out. That's disappointing.
Oh, bummer. It must be a sign.
Yeah, Crazy Cat Lady and Gigi O'Mara breaking it down on the D4.
That's right.
Zoom room.
Like the good old days of PCs or BoJays.
The Office. It's now The Office.
Sorry. The Office. Sorry. I'm outdated.
Yeah, you are. Hey, no longer a Gladstone girl.
I know.
Anyway. Well, look, thank you so much, Georgie. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.